And make sure you watch that Twitter feed of ours because Toy Soldier streams a lot of gears and they're constantly grinding, guys. I've been to several of their streams and they don't stop. That's all they do. They grind gears.
These are facts.
No pun intended, but they do.
They grind gears. I'm gonna make a meme right now.
What's going on, Razor? How was UMG? Tell us about the venue before we get into the
What's
goodies.
up, crazy? Yeah, DC was actually really cool. The venue was great. Chris did a really good job this time with the format. After so many people had complained about how Dallas was laid out, there was plenty of room. They did a really good job. So the venue is absolutely amazing. Probably the best UMG venue I've seen. So yeah, it was really nice. DC was great.
Now, before we get into the intel of what everything and how everything went down at UMG, I did want to ask you about the future of eSports. MLG just had its first online qualifier from the looks of things for Rocket League and whatnot, so it looks like we're going to get a LAN event for that.
Esports is on the rise, that's for sure. All you have to do is look at the years that have been in the past and see where we are now. Call of Duty is a perfect example of that, but that wouldn't be really my best example. I would say that games like Dota and League of Legends are probably the models that we should follow as far as growth on esports.
Now, since you did bring up the Call of Duty team, and we are supposed to be here talking about UMG, start us out in the beginning of pool play, day one. Who did we play, and how did it go down?
All right, so day one, we knew what bracket we were gonna place.
Bracket of death. It was the bracket of death. I don't care what anybody says. That was. As soon as I seen it, my jaw just kind of stopped and went, ooh.
It is what it is. When you go into this, and I know my players, especially Profit, will say this, is like, you got to be ready to face off anybody. You can't go in there thinking we need an easy pool and that way we can have a good run. That's just not the way that esports works. That's not the mentality that any of my players have, and that's not the mentality that any player should have. That being said, we did have a hard pool. We had FaZe, we had Epsilon, and we had Envy in our pool, and then Justice came out from the open bracket and made it into our pool. Day one,
the pool of death.
Day one, we ended up having to face off with Envy, and we had a really rough first game hard point. They ended up taking it off of us, I think, by, we had a slow start. They ended up taking the hard point, and I think it was by 44. We ended up coming back and winning the S&D in a pretty dominant fashion, 6-2. And it started looking pretty good for us. And then the uplink, we couldn't get anything together on the uplink. It just wasn't looking good. All in all, we just couldn't get things together. They ended up taking up the uplink, and then they ended up taking the next hard point. And by definition, we are a respawn team. Like, Prophet will say this, Fastball will say this. The way that we play and the way that it's been working for us in Advanced Warfare, and the way that I think that it should be played in Advanced Warfare because of how fast it is respawns will win you the games. And you've got to play hard, you've got to play fast, and it's all about how much time that you can stop the opponent from being able to get and how much time that you can soak up. So our playstyle has always been running, sub-heavy games and flying on the point and making sure that we cause those gunfights to happen and throwing down what we can. And it just didn't really work out for us this time because we were running one AR and we just didn't have enough point pressure. And that's what it really came down to. So our respawn game was not what it should have been. And we just fell short. So Envy ended up taking the series 3-1. Then we had to play FaZe, and FaZe just came out with guns blazing. They're a really good respawn team. They're a pretty good all-around team. They ended up taking the hard point off of us. We ended up going into the S&D. They ended up winning the S&D. I think it was 6-3. We ended up going into the uplink, and he lost the uplink by literally like 20 seconds. We made a really good play to 15-second the ball in the final like 45 seconds. All we had to do was watch the ball respawn, and we just didn't have the people in position. We ended up getting 3 down, and the other person that was left alone had to face up 4 of them, ended up getting taken down, and they ended up getting a last-second capture, like literally 5 seconds left.
But there's going to be 2 players down for Vex. Enable inside of their base, trying to hold them off from green. This is going to be a big gunfight going down. 2 players up top. Yellow, Glacier with the drone behind him. Needs to go for the 1-point play, and he's going to shoot it. Look away, but no! Bruno gets a big stop. He's going to drop. Profit there, and Glacier puts that dunk in. That's going to be it.
But I seen it live as it happened. I do not know how you were that high in the air, in that position, on the map to catch that ball the way you did. Because I don't even know on the face team who threw the ball. They made sure they lobbed that ball so high in the air because that was their last chance for a score.
Yeah, it was
for the tie, to make sure that it couldn't get intercepted. And he got it. So I was going to say that last 45 seconds of that map in particular against FaZe was something to behold. I think that's why Uplink has become so popular in the esports circuit. And I'm glad to see it come back with Black Ops 3. Now, what happened with the rest of that FaZe match?
So that was the third round, and then FaZe ended up taking them at 3-0. So we ended up going on to the next day 0-2 in our pool.
Nice. And now going into the next day, you knew you had an open bracket team, and then of course you had one more pool play, of course, being Epsilon. Before we get into that, I know that you tweeted out we were supposed to play, I think it was Vanguard? Is that what you tweeted out? Or Vanquish?
They had the pools messed up, and they really didn't know what was going on. First, we were told we were playing Vanquish, and then Vanquish was told that they were playing Denial. And so Justice sat down. Like it was really confusing. I had to go through a couple of different people to figure it out. We ended up finally figuring it out that it was Justice that made it through into our pool, and Vanquish ended up having to play Denial, not Justice playing Denial, and we had to play Justice. So we ended up playing Epsilon at, I believe it was like 10 in the morning. We ended up having some really close matches with Epsilon, but it didn't work out in our favor. Epsilon ended up taking the series, and then we ended up playing Justice, and Justice was on fire. They hadn't dropped a map yet, actually, coming out through the open bracket. So once they got into pool play, they were something like 15-0 as far as map count. So they were really heated. Spacely is a great player. I've always liked Mike. Big heart on that kid. He's always looking to try to make the best move possible for himself. I like Mike a lot, and so yeah, they came out and he really brought these young players out to play, and they ended up taking the series, and so we ended up last in our pool, and on the next day we ended up having to play in champ losers. And
take us through that champ losers bracket real quick. I think you officially tweeted out 13th through 16th, I think it was our official position.
That was our final placement. So we went into champ losers, I think it was round 7, and we ended up, I think, having to play Circuit eSports. I don't remember who they beat. They beat somebody important. I can't remember who it was, but they beat a team that they should have lost to according to the standards. So we ended up playing Circuit eSports, and we ended up taking that series 3-0 against Circa. And then we ended up having to play Vanquish, and we ended up taking that series 3-0. And then we ended up having to play FaZe again, because FaZe ended up having a run where they just they got knocked out of champ winners after their pretty decent run through pool play. I think they were second in the pool that we played in, FaZe and Envy. And so yeah, we ended up having to play FaZe for a second time, and we ended up playing the series pretty well, but it's like, again, we just didn't have enough point pressure on the hard points. Their S&D game was really good, so we ended up losing that series. And yeah, somebody mentioned in the chat, it was a Circuit that beat Tactical Turtles. So Tactical Turtles was out there. A lot of people had the exit and those guys going pretty far, and Circa ended up taking them out.
On with UMG, of course, so we did lose out to FaZe. What was that final map count, Razor?
Yeah, FaZe ended up taking the series 3-0 and knocking us out of the tournament. They went on to, I believe, place 7th. maybe. I think so. I think they ended up placing in the top 8. They ended up having a tough break against ISO in a close match that I watched. They ended up taking it to S&D Game 5, and then ISO eked it out, man. So they ended up sending FaZe home, which FaZe were the champions from the last tournament. So they were thought to go really far, and it just goes to show how unpredictable this game can be.
Couple Call of Duty World Champions on that team too.
It just goes to really show how unpredictable Advanced Warfare is. It's one of those games where you always have to be really, really on point, and movement is just such a key factor. And I don't think that Call of Duty was ever supposed to be this fast. So it makes the game a little unstable.
I heard we did pick up a little consolation prize there. You want to tell us about that?
So UMG actually, said, hey, we're going to do something neat. We're going to give $1,000 to the teams that aren't in the Pro League, the MLG Pro League, that had the highest placings. So Justice ended up getting $1,000, and Lethal Gaming came out to play with with a really great run. They surprised a lot of people, and they ended up placing, I think, 9th through 12th overall. So Lethal Gaming and Justice both got the $1,000 handed to them because they had the higher placings. So that left a 3-way tie between I believe it was XGN and Stunner and Vex. So we ended up having to play a consolation prize match to be able to figure out who was going to end up taking that $1,000 home. We didn't even know about that. We were actually told just to come in the morning and fill out our tax paperwork, and we were going to get handed the check. So we all went out on on the night. We all went out drinking. We went out to have a good night. So I get it.
Feeling a little rough
right.
the next morning,
By the
Maria.
way, your camera just died crazy. So I got a message from Chris at 9 a.m. and he was like, "You guys gonna be ready at 10?" And I was like, "What?" So, long story short, he had already contacted Prophet. Prophet was already awake. We ended up scheduling our match for 1 o'clock. They were already set up, Stunner and XGN playing before that. So we went there and we watched Stunner and XGN beat Stunner pretty indefinitely. So then we had to play Stunner, and as long as we won that, then it was just going to be XGN and us. We didn't have to play XGN. So we ended up playing Stunner. We beat Stunner 3-0, and we ended up getting the $1,000 prize.
Did that make that kind of finalize the weekend?
Yeah, it's nice to come home with something. These events cost a lot, and we're not FaZe, we're not Optic, we're not those guys that have huge sponsors that are throwing thousands of dollars at them. So a lot of this comes out of my pocket. A lot of it comes out of the donations, fans, streams, stuff like that. So it really helps that our fans really support us, but a lot of it comes out of my pocket, and so getting $1,000 to be able to help cover some of the expenses is definitely nice.
We're going to run one last ad, and then I will let some, we're going to call it a night. Thanks for coming. I do appreciate it. Unfortunately, I do have to get up and do the job grind tomorrow first thing in the morning, and it is getting late here on the West Coast. So you guys, for things on the East Coast, thanks for staying up, because it's 2 in the morning for you. So we do appreciate it. And make sure you drop that follow down below. Head over to our YouTube channel, drop a sub, watch a couple videos, throw a couple likes in them, help us spread the good word of the Vex family. Thanks, guys, for watching. Peace out.